You want to talk about shopping carts for another hour?
Mr. Chairman, did I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Oh, start event. That's right. Start event. Did you hand out my materials? Got it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill that you all saw last year. It passed this full Senate 2119 on a bipartisan basis. It basically relates to local government authority in Northern Virginia to regulate or the shopping carts. There is a series of line amendments I hope we can make. Some other jurisdictions have asked to be part of the bill. Arlington and Alexandria have, and I think staff suggests we just make it Planning District 8 to make it cleaner.
All right, is that the amendment we have?
Yeah.
Somebody want to offer, move that amendment that we make?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we make it Planning District 8. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just so you all have some context, I prepared this presentation I prepared actually about 4 years ago with some modifications, but the first page here just shows you the situation that we're dealing with in part of my district. You can see there's this 800-unit trailer park surrounded by Costco, Walmart, and a whole bunch of other retailers, and there's a creek that runs alongside of all that and eventually runs out by George Washington's house, Mount Vernon. And we've had a real problem with in this particular vicinity with a lot of people taking shopping carts and pushing them home and then leaving them on the street. And then eventually these carts often end up in the drainage ditches, and then as soon as it rains, they end up going into the creek. And I've now taken about 230 shopping carts out of the creek myself in creek cleanups that I've led over the last 7 years. Every year, the first time we did it, we took out about 180, and ever since we go back, it's about 10 or 15 a year. But you have some pictures here. You can see the volume of trash that we encounter every single time we go to clean up this creek. The problem with the carts is they get down in the creek, they roll over, they fall down, then they start embedding themselves in the creek bed. They create these big shopping cart dams. They're really good at capturing leaves and bottles and trash and just creating massive trash piles. When I started asking, another thing I just want to point out is that my legislation became more popular. Some other areas of the county heard about it. There's a big problem in Springfield. Some people, and there's this letter from the Springfield Civic Association on here. When Arlington and Alexandria heard about my bill, they wanted to be part of it because they have problems in Arlington and Alexandria. And when I started talking with the retail merchants about how to deal with it, they noted for me that Virginia Beach has a program where they notify property owners that there's a loose cart, and they have 48 hours to come and get it, and if they don't, they're fined or they're levied the cleanup costs. The reason Virginia Beach can do it and nobody else can is because it's in their charter. And so what we're seeking to do here with this legislation is give that type of power to other jurisdictions besides Virginia Beach. There's another thing here where just to get a sense of the cost. Before I started doing my creek cleanups, Fairfax County paid about $70,000 or $65,000 to people to clean up the trash in this creek because it's just a continuing, constant problem. If I wasn't having these volunteers do it, taxpayers would pay for it. And the basic concept of the bill is that a locality, once they find or locate a shopping cart, they could give the owner of the cart notice that the loose cart is there. The owner would have a period of time to come get it. If they don't get it, then the county could assess them the cost for cleaning it up.
Mr. Chairman, two
Yep.
questions for the person. The first one, in Virginia Beach, it's a charter. So are you trying to make this a charter bill just for your area?
With the amendment you just approved, it would apply to all the jurisdictions in Plan District 8, which is basically Prince William County, Loudoun County, in towards Washington, D.C. So it's about, 7 jurisdictions, I think.
The second question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Centerspool.
Let's say if I was living in North Virginia, 10 years from now, I may move up there, and there's a cart in front of my house that someone left in front of my house, then am I responsible for that, being charged for that?
No, if say for example it's a Safeway cart, you'd have to have the county would come out, see it, and then send a notice to Safeway there's a Safeway cart in front of Senator Spruill's house, and if Safeway didn't come get it within 2 weeks or within 10 days or whatever the time period is, then they could assess Safeway the cost of cleaning it up.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Steph.
I'm going to make a comment on this, and my comment is, if somebody steals some of your property and then they abandon that or throw that somewhere, I don't think that you should be charged to have to go retrieve that property. The businesses have already paid to purchase it. Somebody stole that. I think the right thing to do is to charge those who stole it, and not those who lost the property. This is like if my vehicle gets stolen and they abandon it in a ditch somewhere, it's my responsibility to go get my car, pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. Or if my friend's purse, my seatmate's purse is stolen, and then it's disposed of in the street, then they find out it's hers, they come back and they charge her because her purse was used and is now polluting the street. I think this is not a good direction to go.
Mr. Chairman, could I respond to that?
Senator Surovell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the same discussion we had last year, and it's one of the points people raise every year, and it's totally wrong. In order to prove somebody guilty of petty larceny in Virginia, you have to show they have the intent to permanently deprive somebody of something. If somebody simply takes something for a temporary period of time because they want to borrow it, that's not petty larceny. And so the reason you don't see these people charged with crimes is because it's not a crime to take a shopping cart and put it back, push it down the street if you don't intend to keep it forever. And so there's no criminal charge they can be charged with. And one of the changes I made to the bill, by the way, it might make the senator feel a little better, is I added paragraph D, which also authorizes a locality to adopt an ordinance to make it a local civil infraction for where somebody could be cited for pushing a cart off the property of the owner. So that would give some additional authority to localities to deal with it that way if they choose to deal with it that way. But right now, they can't be charged with petty larceny.
Any other questions? Are you through? Did you finish?
I'm finished. I think there's I'm
sure.
A couple people to speak in favor. There's probably a couple opposed. I think you all heard testimony last week from Springfield folks. I have some other people who are in these pictures that you've seen that normally would come, but they didn't feel comfortable coming today given what's going on outside. Otherwise, they would be here to say that it's a desperately needed measure.
Too cold for them, right?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, come on.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Sarah Taylor with the City of Alexandria. We are in favor of this legislation. We actually asked Senator Surovell to carve us in. For us, we actually don't have. We are hopeful we will never have to charge someone with this and apply this to a business. What we hope is that this is a tool in our toolbox where we can encourage businesses to better manage the carts on their property, to geofence them, to keep them from being able to be taken off the property, rather than having use that as the carrot rather than the stick. So we're grateful to the senator for carving us in, and hopefully you'll support the legislation.
I'm just curious, and I'm sure I've asked this question over the many times this thing's been up, but have you all engaged with the big box shops in dialogue, and they just give you the back of their hand, or what's the result of that?
Sort of. First of all, in the pictures you saw, probably about half of those carts are Walmart. Walmart eventually wrote a check to a charity in my district to sort of make up for there's so many we took 100 of their carts out of the creek. And then they eventually installed a geofencing system on their property. However, they stopped buying the carts with the little brakes in them, so it doesn't exactly work. When they built the Costco, I wrote Costco a letter and asked them to install a geofencing system. They refused to. They said their customers would never do such a thing. And, of course, I've taken about 20 Costco carts out since. I asked the Board of Supervisors if they would proffer a cart control system, and they refused to do it. The problem with, if you can look at the map, some of these other retailers on one of these malls, it's kind of hard for them because it's a big mall and there's like 30 stores around it, and so you can't geofence every single store. So there's some places that put these bars on their shopping carts so that you can't get out the door. And there's other places that do quarter deposits, and there's strategies they could use to reduce this incidence, but they don't. And from my perspective, they just decide it's a cost of doing business. They're going to lose a cart or two every week, and they just deal with it, and then it becomes our problem, and that's why it needs to be fixed.
Anybody else to speak in favor of the bill? I know we took some yes last week, but just in case there's a stray person against.
By the way, nobody has come to me to tell me they're against except for Mr. Bohannon. Last week. Oh, you did? Yeah. No, I didn't remember that. Okay. It's been a busy week. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Parker Slayball with the Virginia Food Industry Association. We're a nonprofit that represents about 530 grocery retail locations across the state. We're opposed to Senate Bill 631. As pointed out, when shopping carts are abandoned on a premise off-site of a retailer, they are considered stolen property. When found, the legislation will require the owner of the shopping cart to be responsible for recovering the cart, even if the cart is found to be floating in a river or stream, of course, not by the owner's doing. Should the item not be recovered by the owner, the locality can then remove and dispose of the shopping cart, with the owner being the one responsible for the cost. The bill does not, however, point out an amount of time that the owner has to go and recover that shopping cart before it can be removed and disposed of by the locality. Senate Bill 631 also does not set a maximum financial amount for which can be charged to the owner of that shopping cart to cover the locality's removal and disposal cost. We don't want our shopping carts stolen, obviously. We certainly don't want them piling up in the rivers and streams around Planning District 8. However, what this legislation does is make shopping carts the only personal property that, if stolen, leaves the onus of recovery onto the cart's owner. For all those reasons, we'd ask that you would oppose Senate Bill 31.
Mr. Chairman, Rob Bohannon here representing the Virginia Retail Merchants Association, and we are in opposition to the bill. One point that came up that Senator Steff made about, we're basically penalizing someone who's had something taken from them. The section of the code that it references dealing with removal of shopping carts, it's a Class 3 misdemeanor to remove a shopping cart from the premises of a shopping center. So it is in fact a crime to do that. We're not changing the behavior by enacting a bill like this. We're trying to prevent people from taking them. And if we say, well, it's the retailer's responsibility who had the property taken from them to either, pay us or not keep it on their property, we're not really solving the problem we're trying to get at here. The Food Marketing Institute estimates that $2 million worth of shopping carts are stolen from retailers each year. And that's a per store loss of about $8,000 to $10,000 each. So I would submit to you that it is not a cost of doing business for retailers. Many retailers operate on very small margins, and $8,000 to $10,000 is a substantial amount of money to just give away per year. I had personal experience with this. I remember, I worked in retail in high school, and someone would call, and shopping cart ended up down at another shopping center. We'd come and go get it. As Mr. Slayball mentioned, this bill has no amount of time for the retailer to respond to a call that a cart has been abandoned, which we find problematic, and doesn't give a time frame for how long it actually has to be on the premises for it to be abandoned. It's a little too open-ended, and again, we're penalizing the retailer who had the property taken for them, and for those reasons, we oppose the bill.
Next.
My name is Michael Imprevento. I'm speaking as an individual citizen and resident of the city of Virginia Beach. From the common sense standpoint, I'd like to remind the members of the dais that Virginia has long had a public policy of not penalizing people for third-party criminal action. And this is prevalent in a lot of Supreme Court cases as well. And that's what this would be, is to make somebody responsible for third-party criminal activity. And I would strongly disagree with the notion that taking a piece of property with a significant value and removing it and abandoning it is not evidence of petty larceny. I think it's a clear criminal act. And I believe that this bill is misdirected, and I respectfully urge opposition to it.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Brian Luciano. I am a master police officer from Virginia Beach, and I am also president of the police union. I did not intend at all to speak on this issue at all, but I just wanted to clarify something. I'm probably the only person in this room to actually charge someone with stealing a shopping cart and get a conviction. So in my opinion and my experience, it is a crime to remove a shopping cart and not return it, and I believe that abandoning it shows the intent of depriving it from its owner for its purposes. So that's all I have to say.
This guy would get you off of that, though.
Mr. Chairman?
And also, to be fair, it was probably a decade ago, but...
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Spruill.
Question to the patient. I'm looking at, I don't see that one thing that once you notify the Samco, the Walmarts about these, I don't see where you get them a time limit. So I've been notified that my carts are in the creek, what have you. But then, how much time do I have to go and get them out?
That would be up to the locality to set, but we could, of course, put a maximum or a minimum time period in the bill if that was something the committee was worried about giving the locality the authority over.
Second question, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
And so once the locality will give me a time to do that, then if I don't meet that requirement as far as time limit of getting those out, then there's not in here a set what you're going to charge me. So I'll say, so you gave me notice, thank you, so I'm not going to pay you no mind.
So it doesn't have a limit, and I'll tell the gentleman a couple things. Number one is, the cost to remove one of these things is variable. The gentleman you heard from last week in Springfield just tweeted a video of 10 carts he took a video of on his way to work this morning to make sure we saw it. And picking up carts on the street, not a big deal. But when one of these things gets in the creek.
Mr. Chairman, that was not my question. My question is that I'm the store owner and you have notified me and I refuse to
come get
heed
it
to that notice and come get it. So, and the localities, like you said, have it. So I refuse to do that. So now, okay, well, you got 6 or 7 carts. I don't have time to mess with those. And you have notified me. And so now I can be fined. So what would be the fine? Who decides on how much you can charge them?
Well, it would be up to the locality to either set a fine scale or to assess the cost of removing the carts. And so my point is, say, for example, there was like 3 carts on the side of the road, and the locality sent somebody to pick them up, and it took them 2 hours to do it. They would charge them either some set fine or the cost that it took the employees to go do it. However, as I was starting to say, when one of these things gets in the creek, in my experience, it takes 3 men with a chain winch about an hour to get, maybe even sometimes an hour and a half to get one of these things out when it's buried into the ground. Because you have to tie it up to a tree and you got to haul it out 1 inch at a time. You got to get a bunch of shovels. Then you got to carry it out of the woods. And it takes a lot of time. And that's why the county had to pay $70,000 to clean this creek up once, because it's very time consuming. And that's why we need to try and nip this problem in the bud early.
Thanks, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Bell.
Question on this. It seems like there's some similarities with this and what's happened with scooters. People rent those, they kind of abandon, leave them. And I know some of the localities have had, or companies have had, like where you get a reward system bringing them back. Is there any kind of a best practice with that as another form of mitigation versus the mitigations that can be installed there? And is this in line with that, is my question.
Well, I would say to the senator that this would certainly incentivize the retailers to come up with systems like that. I mean, for example, they could pay somebody to go and gather them up and bring them back rather than getting cited for them repeatedly. I know there's plenty of people in my district would probably be happy to go around picking up carts if they got paid money for it. But like I said, at Aldi, they typically have put a quarter in to get the cart, put a quarter in when you give it back. There's some systems like that some retailers use. And by the way, this isn't just Virginia Beach. If you look on the internet, there's all kinds of localities across the country that have implemented legislation or ordinances to hold retailers accountable for not keeping their carts under control. And from my point of view, this isn't about punishing the victim. Retailers could take steps to keep this from happening. They just choose not to do it. And this would, I think, if a locality wants to do something, would give them some options. And as I said, if you're concerned about the people taking them, I also drafted this year to give authority to locality to fine somebody up to $500 for taking a cart off the property. So that's in there too, if they want to go that direction.
Anybody else with any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, would the patron to this bill mind a friendly amendment? And I offer it this way. We don't know what you're talking about down where I'm from and where your family's from when you say carts, because we say buggies. So do you mind changing carts to buggies so my people will understand what you're talking about?
You can change the cart or buggy if you like. Senator Hanger voted for it last time, so I think he understood it pretty well.
I think he's gotten smarter since then.
Had my proxy.
Oh, okay.
And we were the two that voted for it.
Oh, okay.
All right, we operate by motion. Well, you got to characterize that a little differently. Substitute motion.
Substitute motion was
Substitute motion to approve. To report it.
Okay. All right. All in favor of reporting? Aye or nay, whatever.
Great, thank you. If anybody wants to give me my presentation back, that'd be great. Send it print it in color and whatever. Unless you really want to keep it.
All right, it looks like we're down to committee members. And fresh from a successful 2-night run in Charlotte, North Carolina, Bill Stanley, 314.